Hello, welcome back to another excerpt from a spiritual ascension. So it's going to be story time. So I know I've kind of told you bits and pieces of how my relatives in spirit, those who have passed on, have played a big part in my journey. But I kind of wanted to go back and um, kind of say how each person, all four of my grandparents, my father who passed away in 2003, and my son who passed away in 2007, all played a part in my ascension journey. So um, back in 2017, my no, so I let me back up even further. So I've kind of said this in other videos, but I kind of wanted to give you guys more of a timeline as far as how um, my family played a part, and as well as your family, your ancestors are playing a big part on your journey. Okay. So know that you can always reach out to them whenever you need help along your journey. Please just call out to them. They are with you 100%. They were the ones that told me that I was going to go on this journey, even though I didn't understand what they were really saying at this time. Um, so back in 2014, my father and actually it was, yeah, my son came through first. Um, I had gone, my boyfriend at the time, his sister was a psychic medium, and we had gone to visit her store that she had. And I was still in that kind of, like this is not right, this is evil, this is so forth and so on. And I didn't really feel well being there. Um, I had bought a couple crystals, and one was a tiger's eye. And when I went to go hand them to her to pay, she was ringing them up for me. All of a sudden, she started telling me all these things about my son. I had never met her before or anything. Things that I hadn't even told my boyfriend at the time. So there's no way that he could have told her. She was telling me about exactly what floor I lived on and that I had these pictures of on the wall. And I was just so like taken back and was like, oh my goodness. And she said, well, he's here. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean he's here? And she said, he's pointing to the tiger's eye in your palm of your hand. And like, I was like speechless. Then she was saying, he wants you to know that you're okay. That's a big part of like, I'm a psychic medium. So that's a big part of when a relative that has passed on, they want you to know that they're all right, that they're okay. And my son, not to get graphic, but my son was hit by a drunk driver. So both of his legs were crushed. And she said that he's riding a bicycle. So he's pedaling. And he wanted me to know that he was okay. So that's how our loved ones in spirit give us indications that they are okay on the other side. Okay. Then my father, who came through after that, when he died of heart disease. And I remember when I went into the hospital to visit him, his legs had swollen up really badly. And he was always very active and on his feet and never anything like that. So it really took me back when I saw him in the hospital. But she said he's walking around and he's fine, he's doing well. So that was like his indication to me that he was doing well. After that, I started seeing this other psychic medium in Union Square in New York City. Um, And he was the one, he had actually, him and I had a past life together that we figured out. And he was the one that kind of told me, gave me all the instructions from my ancestors saying that my father said, you're going to go to the New Hampshire Maine border. Um, they kept saying there's something about Naples. And he says, I don't know what that is. Um, and that's when he told me that, I had these abilities, but they had been suppressed since I was a child, because of like the religion I had been brought up in, and that I needed to bring my abilities back out again. Um, what else? There's a whole bunch of things if I think of anything else. But that was like the first initial thing that my father, my son, and now my grandmother, um, who passed away in 1980 when I was about 14. Um, and it's always something that we used to go visit her at her house, and relatives would all be around. Like, she had a big kitchen, and, me and the cousins were, playing and running around. But there was this moment, like, I don't remember too much about her. Just her sitting in the kitchen. They were all like drinking something, and I know she smoked cigarettes a lot. Um, but for some reason, I had gone into her bedroom to get something, and I remember turning around and looking back into the kitchen, and there was this eye contact, and there was something about that that's like the one thing that I really remember about her, this personal thing. Like, I don't remember any conversation with her or anything, but there was this point in time where there was this contact, this connection between me and her. When she did pass, um, all four of my grandparents passed away from cancer. Like, they all had smoked. And my mother, I used to have this like beautiful teal green dress and with ruching in the front, I remember. And my mother took my dress and she said, this is what we're going to bury grandma in. I was like, you're taking my dress. And it was like weird feeling like my grandmother was going to be in the casket with my dress on. But there was something in that, in the meaning of that. Now, I was trying to bring up my pictures of my grandmother, that she was her mother, which it seems like there's something about, down south, Virginia, my great grandfather. So we're talking about my great great grandmother was 14 and working on a plantation down in Virginia. So this is probably like the late 1800s. Um, and I don't know what transpired, but there was some kind of relationship between her and the plantation owner's son. And she ended up getting pregnant and had my great grandfather. Um, he had got married, had a bunch of children, and then I always remember these aunts and uncles, but there was something, they weren't my full aunts and uncles. And that first wife passed away, and then he remarried my great grandmother and had my grandmother. So my abilities come down through that line of my great grandmother, my grandmother. My mother has abilities that she denies because, of course, she's involved in that religion. And that's why my father and my grandmother had to come through and say, hey, look, you got these psychic abilities, you need to, and as well as healing abilities. And that was something that was practiced deep, back then. It was just something that was done that we have, and passed on. along that people ignore these things these days. Um, and I was kind of skittish at first because I'm like, since I was brought up to believe that that was evil and bad, and like, how would other people accept who I am, you know? And it's kind of amazing where a lot of times I hold back in saying, that I have these abilities. But when I do, people are very like, oh, really, really, and then they want, want me to answer questions for them and stuff. It's kind of funny. Um, but anyway, later on, my father had come through in another reading, and with him was his mother. Um, she was kind of sometimes those who have passed along might be a little hesitant to come forward, and she kind of held back, and then she kind of came forward, and what she kept saying to me was, where's the ring? And so that's the medium kept saying to me, she's saying, where's the ring? And I'm like, what ring? I don't know what he kept saying, she's saying, where's the ring? Where's the ring? And I told this story in another video about, I'm going to say a couple years later. Um, my mother came, and um, I had stayed over with her one night, and in the morning she comes and she gives me this little like velvet bag, and inside of it was her wedding ring. And she was like, I want you to have this because I know if something happens, you may not get it. And I was like really taken back, like, whoa, that there was the ring. So then it's like my father came through, my maternal grandmother, who had given me a lot of instructions about, my abilities. Now here was my father's mother who had come through, tell me about this ring I was going to receive, which was going to have significance later on. I haven't even got to that with you guys yet. Um, my grandfather then came through at one point and told me about how um, he had taken me out of that religion. So our ancestors play a big part in our lives that we don't even realize. They're a part of our soul family, right? And they play a big part. So some people may call them guides or um, whatever, that the ones that are helping you in spirit along your path. Um, when he told me that he had was the one to kind of taken me, guide me out of that religion. He says there's something about you feeling guilty about that. He says you feel guilty. And at first I'm like, I don't feel, but then I'm like, well, I guess I was made to feel guilty for leaving the religion because my sisters had shunned me after I refused to return back to it. So part of it was the guilt that they played on me to make me feel guilty. So I think that's where, but as far as my leaving, um, I didn't feel bad about that. Like it was a choice that I had made, but I was made to feel guilty. So there is three of my grandparents already have come through, my father and my son. Um, so now it's about 2019, and my teacher, who I had taken psychic classes with in order to bring through my abilities again. And we were kind of doing online practice readings with other people and doing some mediumship also. And one of my classmates had said to me during, she says, there's something, so, she's describing this person who's coming through. She said, he's like in a Navy uniform. And I'm like, oh, that's my father's father. And I said, he's the only one of my grandparents who hadn't come through as of yet. And I was so excited because when I was young, he came and stayed with us sometimes. And I just loved him to death. And I was very young. Um, I think he passed away when I was like 5 years old. But I used to follow him around the yard. And I was so disappointed like that he hadn't come through as of yet. But she said there here he is. He was in his Navy uniform, and I have a picture of him. Um, I guess this is probably World War II, and he was in his Navy uniform. And she was going on to say he was the one now that was describing that, you're going to, in so many words, I didn't understand, but she was saying there's something like special about you that you're going to be doing something, um, going on like a journey or whatever. But I didn't understand. She says it's like something like you really, and I don't think she quite understood it. Like she was trying to explain it to me. And she's like, you need to, I don't know, do some deep meditation or something like that. And so I'm like, okay. And she goes, there's more. So after we finished the session, she says, can I call you? So she called me and she says, like, there's a lot here. And she goes, I don't know how to really explain it to you, but like he's coming through and he wants to tell you that like something's gonna happen. And it's like nothing bad, but you're gonna go through something. And I'm like, okay. So I was a little nervous, but like, I always know that there's protection there. And that was the end of 2019. And then a couple months later, April 2020 is when my 5 year journey started. So I really haven't had any readings since that time. So it's like it felt like they were giving me a bunch of information to prepare me for this hero's journey. So if you know anything about tarot, we know that in the major arcana, you start with the Fool card, and he's starting his hero's journey, not taking anything with him. He's just like risking it all and going with his gut to just go and be free and risk, take risk, and trying to think what else. Just take is something new. He's beginning something new, and he is kind of leaving whatever was in the past. And as you go along through each of the major arcana cards, it's kind of like what he comes along, goes through, or comes to meet someone, goes through something along the way. So even look up if you want to Google Hero's Journey, because that's not even just with the tarot. That's been referred to for centuries and centuries. That someone starting out on something new is kind of called a hero's journey because you're starting something and then there's an end to it. Um, So it's pretty interesting. And so I just wanted to kind of tell you guys a background of how this all came about for me and how important my ancestors were for me and helping me to understand this. Because if I didn't have all those instructions, and now when I was in the middle of this, I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like, why is all this happening? Now I had references to kind of go back and say, oh, they said this was going to happen. Even like I had said, they told me there's something about Naples. And I'm like, Naples, Naples. When I first landed in Maine, um, my first place that I lived was right on the border of Naples. So it was, I didn't even know there was an only thing I thought of was Naples in Florida. So I'm like, what is Naples? And I didn't even know there was a Naples in Maine. So it was like is such a beautiful thing, just that to know that my ancestors have been with me on this journey and have prepared me for what was upcoming. Okay. So hopefully this helps you to prepare for yours, or if you're on it, please reach out to your ancestors, reach out to whoever played a big part in your life up until this time. Okay. Gonna leave it there. Thank you again for being here. Please subscribe, and if you would like to spend any time with me, have a reading, there's a link below to book time with me.